What's going on, guys? Back for another vlog. Headed one more week toward nationals. First week back in an accumulation phase. So I'll let the vlog play out after this, but I just want to mention once again that the Athletes Performance Toolkit, the free weekly email series, is doing very well. Excited to hear all the good feedback from people about how some of these lessons have been able to impact their training, helping them have a more broad perspective. So it's free. I'll put the link up right here. Hope you guys check that out. Thanks. What's going on, guys? As I mentioned, this is week one of an accumulation phase. Starting to introduce some singles on squat and bench press to get kind of acclimated to some heavier loading and just the execution required for some singles. So that's been really good. As you guys will go on to see, I did a 464 single on bench, which is pretty easy. A 666 pound squat, and I did some triples on deadlift at 705. So yeah, super good week. I'm feeling pretty beat up today, so thankfully no training today. What I want to do is read one of the emails that we've got this week for the Athletes Performance Toolkit. This is week 10 on genetic differences and kind of framing what we should do with that information to ourselves, just to give you guys a taste of what the email series is like and what you can look forward to for those who haven't signed up. And I've just received kind of a lot of comments saying that this is something that's been helping people. So I think it's a good subject matter. So I kind of just want to get into that now. Yeah, so here we go. This is titled Genetic Differences, and this is week 9, I guess. You're more than 99% similar to all the other athletes who are coached by TSA. The gender differences, different strengths, skin colors, limb lengths, femur insertions, aches and pains, prior injuries, they all fall into that tiny 1% sliver of the things that make each of us different. Think about what you imagine a perfect powerlifter to be. They might be shorter than average with small arms when they bench press, but long arms when they deadlift, with short femurs and nice insertions into the hip capsule that make depth easy to hit comfortably. Probably high testosterone, resilience to injury, and more copies of the ACTN3 gene, which codes for explosive strength, and a high overall amount of muscle fibers. How much do you differ from this person, and how do you know? Those 1% differences in genetic variance can seem statistically small, but when you're the athlete who needs to fold over in the squat to hit depth, or to fight for every 2.5 kilos gained on your total, it's massive. I get it. It's hard. And there's always going to be some way that you're less than perfect. Maybe you're the athlete who has long arms. Great deadlift starting position. But this also makes the bench press an absolute nightmare to perform, compared to ideals. Your individual experience shapes how you think about squats, bench press, and deadlift. It even shapes what a 7.5 kilo increase in your total means. If you're the kind of athlete who normally gets 30 kilo increases, you're probably pretty disappointed. If you're the athlete who normally gets a 2.5 kilo increase, you're ecstatic. You just tripled your rate of progress. Framing matters, and framing comes in part from our personal experiences and how those are shaped. If you're a coached athlete, the chances are higher that you've been dealt a less than perfect hand when it comes to making progress. More athletes who are having problems with progressing as a powerlifter sign up for coaching in the first place. They're looking for ways to augment a more difficult situation. And we're here for you. Today we talk about genetic differences and being okay with who you are. Here are a few things to keep in mind when thinking about your genes. Number 1, recognize that no one is ideal for everything in powerlifting. The simple fact that long arms make you a great deadlifter and a poorer bench presser attests to the fact that some genetic variables are inverse to each other for superiority in specific qualities. Comparing yourself to the ideal squat and the ideal bench presser and the ideal deadlifter isn't even possible, considering that these 3 people are different and they also aren't you. Take a moment to recognize that while genetic variance explains some chunk of an athlete's ability to progress, we realize there are at least 2 prongs of what success looks like as an athlete. It could mean external success, winning competitions, setting records, qualifying for competitions, or it could mean intrinsic success, setting personal bests, achieving technical mastery, self-discovery through sport. We're always going to argue that it's through a pursuit of the intrinsic successes that anyone ever gets to the extrinsic successes, and that some of that is purely about who your parents were. We'll talk about that in a little. Number 2, comparison is really the enemy. When we're looking at other athletes and thinking, my training partner put 10 kilos on her deadlift when I only added 4 kilos, That downward comparison makes us feel worse about our own efforts, even if we have no idea how good or bad that rate of progress is for them, or how good that rate of progress is for us. You might think, Matt's levers are perfect for the squat. I'm fighting the barbell every time I squat. These types of comparisons make us feel bad about ourselves. Remember, we have no control over other people's limb lengths, just like we don't have control over how much money some celebrity makes, or how someone's skin looks, and all the other comparisons we make on a regular basis. By reducing the amount of comparison we do, by choosing to focus on ourselves and our own efforts, we commit ourselves to remembering the frame of reference that matters most. It's ourselves and our own progress. It might be useful instead to think about change in rate of progress. If you used to gain 5 kilos per 6 months on your squat, and now you're getting more than that, whatever the actual amount is, that's cause for celebration. If your squat looks better, whatever it looked like before, that's cause for celebration. By avoiding comparison, by remembering that you matter more than the ideals you see online, you free yourself from distractions and embrace what matters most. We might not even be seeing people's true selves on display either, considering the impact of the overly positive lens that posting on social media is adapted for, the use of Photoshop, and so on. Yes, people are different, but those differences are out of our hands to affect and change. As a result, we let them go when we can. Number 3, accept who you are because there's no one else you can be. If we focus on the things we can control, genetic variables really aren't one of them. Our job is to make the most of what we have and change what we can to grow toward our goals. You might have rare bicep insertions that mean you can't low bar squat without pain. No matter what your favorite low bar squatter looks like, it's just not a movement your body's built for high optimization. Whatever specific genetic variations make you who you are, treat it like a puzzle to solve. What's the best way we can take this particular athlete and get them to their best, most sustainable progress? Along the way, we celebrate your wins, we prioritize the process over the outcome, and we make strides toward being better. By accepting who you are, your flaws, and your best traits, we can come to peace with the fact the world is full of genetic differences, and all we want is to make the most of what we've got. Number 4, progress makes everything better. It's one of the main things we really want out of all this. When you're making progress, it's much easier to shrug off those differences because you're on your way too. Remember this when you might be in a difficult few weeks or months of training. The acceptance of the genetic lottery is easier when you're doing well, and harder when you aren't, so push through those tough moments. Lastly, one study tracked what would happen if athletes were told they had good genetics for a specific task when in reality they might not have had good genetics. They ended up doing better than the control group. Essentially, the researchers gave people placebo good genetics. Are we going to lie to you and tell you you have great genetics? No. But it shows how powerful the mind can be in affecting what we might normally think is outside the realm of training adaptations. Focus on the things that matter, the things you can control, and everything's going to be okay. So, as an aside, each week we give action steps, which are something to do with the information that you read to apply it in some specific way. So this week's action steps. Spend a week thinking about how you view your abilities. Can you come to grips with your flaws and still accept yourself? This week, step back and check in on the emotional trade of social media. What do you receive from that trade? What do you give? Can you weigh the benefits and decide what to keep and what to remove? Can you view the field of athletic talent on display on social media as a blend of leverages, training experiences, hormones, gene expressions, and more? Let us know how that went. So that's an example of what the weekly emails are like. Some of them aren't as involved as others. Some of them are more, take this test, see how you feel about it. Or implement this thing, see how it goes. But some of them certainly get more philosophical or just kind of talking about the deeper things about attachment to sport and why we do all of this. Huge squat, by the way. I'm really happy with that. So technique thoughts, pretty low this week. Pretty high on just execution and just focusing on getting the job done and looking forward to another week, resting up, really trying to optimize some protein intake, sleep as much as I can, and continue this prep toward nationals. Thanks, guys. Hope you have a great weekend.